Dating is for the birds.
Number five, love is more than words. Greg showed up at the door with roses and used his key to get into Grace's house. He always brought her roses, sometimes yellow, sometimes red, but always something beautiful. Every week he loved to see her smile when he walked into the room. Grace felt like a queen on Greg's arm, and her friends were envious of their relationship. She met Greg when he approached her in the grocery store. At first, when he called, she didn't return his call. Greg was persistent, and eventually they had their first date. 2 years later, and Greg was still in her life. He was her constant, and he cherished having him by her side. Grace couldn't help but think about their dinner last night. Greg had taken her to his company annual company dinner. He was a vice president and a rising star. Her mother often reminded her how lucky she was to date a man like Greg. My family, especially my mother, loved him. We never had a man in our house. My mom and my dad had split up when I was 6 years old. Her mom saw this as an opportunity to Grace to have a different life. When Grace and Greg danced, everyone watched him, holding her tightly and beaming with pride. The next morning, Grace was still glowing from their wonderful night. She looked up as Greg stepped into the room and said, "I love you," handing Grace a dozen of red roses with a kiss on the forehead. He whispered to her, "You are my world." Grace loved Greg more than anything. Greg headed off to the kitchen to cook breakfast. Cooking was one of his favorite pastimes. Greg walked back into the bedroom and said, "Baby, I promise I won't hit you again." Grace said, "Just don't make me mad." As a tear rolled down Grace's bludgeoning black eye, she smiled at Greg and said, "I love you, Greg, and I'm sorry." She knew in her heart that although he spoke the words of love, this was not love. The end. This one to me, it shows almost how just going through what seems to be the perfect relationship is far from that. And I never saw abuse growing up, but my first play was about domestic violence only because of just of how much I'm against it. And so many questions and emotions. Like this one right here, it does anger you because everything is going well until you get to that part about the black guy. And it's like it doesn't matter how he made her mad or why he made her mad. It shouldn't have been done. Ladies, your thoughts.
Okay, so being that this was a story that impacted me, I'll go first on this one. I think this is a classic case. You know, all that glitters isn't gold, right? It's like you never know what a person is going through behind closed doors. From the outside looking in, they look like the perfect couple. You know, even her mother, encouraged her to stay in the situation, reminding her basically, you can't do better than what you have right now. I think that sends a different type of message. So because she didn't have, because it was, clear her parents had gotten divorced when she was very young. So they didn't have, she didn't have a positive male role model in the home with her. And I think sometimes from a parent's perspective, if we choose not to have a partner in the home, we still have to model what is best for our children by first modeling what is best for ourselves. And I think, the sad part is that she took the abuse because maybe deep down she felt like all these words, all these things, being the envy of her friends, at his job, whatever, he basically, she was a trophy. He didn't value her as a human being, as a person, as a woman. She looked good on his arm. He looked good on her arm. They were what we paint as like a fairy tale couple. But that's the thing about domestic violence or violence, period. Once a person goes into their home and closes the door and the blinds or the shades are closed, you don't never know, what a person is experiencing, what they're going through. And, it made me sad because, at some point you want her to see the value that she has in herself more so than anything else, and then have the courage to be able to stand up on her own 2 feet and just walk away.
Wanda, I came in here not knowing what was going on and didn't know, honey, that this book was here. So, first, congratulations on that. How beautiful. But I will say, just that one little part, there are so many women that can put themselves right there in that space, right where those two people are, to some degree, of the span of pain or fear or whatever, and yet it was so simply, beautiful in how it was written, and very profoundly impacting, because of the fact that so many of us, and I say us, have been in those situations. So thank you for your contribution to that conversation, and so beautifully written.
Thank you. And just to echo what Sheila, I think Ron, and think Bikeka again, I think, it's just to highlight the fact that a lot of times we really don't know what's going on in people's lives. And a lot of times we've all known someone who you thought they had the perfect life, the perfect marriage, the perfect relationship, and then to find out later, it might not be at that moment, but years later, somebody may have gone through it themselves, that really they were, in something really been domestic violence. And sometimes people choose to hide it, and they do it for a lot of reasons. They think this is the only relationship they can have. They think this is the best relationship they've ever had. A lot of times they just don't want anybody to know. And so in this instance, she didn't want. Her mother thought she had a perfect relationship. She never saw it in her house. She never saw a man. She didn't grow up with a man in her house, and her mom thought that this was something that she shouldn't let go. And so I think that plays a factor when people make decisions about who they're with and how long they may stay sometimes. So I think we always have to be, really encouraging people to do what's best for them. And sometimes we just don't know.
Well, that's very true. And the fact that we are really in bred, I will say, we are literally bred to believe as a woman that that is okay, that this is okay. And it does, and for some reason, that is something throughout every culture that I can think of. All the known cultures, whether it's indigenous or not, there is that thing of the woman being less than in the picture. And so it doesn't matter if you make trillions of dollars or $50. This is an experience that is hidden, because that's what we've been indoctrinated to do, is to hide it, is to polish it up, is to put the makeup on, and carry the shame. We have the abuse, and then we carry the shame, which is crazy.